All right, to Battleground Canada now. And you know, every time we see a government, a minister standing up announcing this funding, that funding, impossible not to look at those funding announcements in the context of the next general election. And today in London, Ontario, Prime Minister Stephen Harper was there to make one of those announcements. The big announcement in London, a new investment of $5.8 billion to be spent over the next 3 years on infrastructure spending. Sounds reasonable enough. Here's the other thing it'll also do: reduce the cumulative deficit for those 3 years down to $5 billion over 3 years. That is a very thin surplus, my friend. And that also means that the opposition parties will not have as much money to play with, or so I'm thinking. Let's ask a veteran of Conservative backrooms, Jason Leader. That's my thinking.
Yeah.
That we saw that announcement today. We saw the family package of income splitting and universal child care benefit.
Yeah.
A lot of things. Absolutely, the PM is going to leave the fiscal cupboard completely bare by the time we get to the polls next year.
Yeah, and I think good strategy, right, Dave? I mean, I think you know, you want to make sure that your opponent has to make decisions on things, right? And I think that we've seen, whether it's on fiscal things or other things, I think, or other issues, I think the Prime Minister and his team have tried to force decisions on Justin Trudeau, because when they have to make a decision, it's much more difficult, right? It's more like governing.
And the Trudeau gang has made a decision on one very controversial thing. They will withdraw income splitting. They'll raise the taxes that have just been cut.
Exactly, which, I mean, both of them think they're right? That's the interesting thing, right? And we've had this in a number of election campaigns, is both teams think they're right, only one of them is, and we're going to find out, you know, next October. But in terms of the fiscal room, yeah, I mean, this is classic sort of conservative behavior, right? Draw down the surplus, force your opponent to look like he's going to want to raise taxes. Trudeau's also already said he would raise taxes, so I mean the strategy is clear. They're both, I guess, happy with their positions, it looks like to me.
One of the other notable one for this particular announcement, it was $5.8 billion on infrastructure. And one of the things that has been common for Trudeau over the last, well, probably a few months now, as he's going around the country, is saying we need to spend more money on infrastructure. Yeah. And here the PM has just said, good point, and they're doing it. So you've really sort of neutered that little threat.
Tried to take it off the table. The other thing that infrastructure does is a lot of small town mayors, medium-sized city mayors, the FCM, the sort of umbrella groups that represent municipalities. They all look for this kind of funding, and you can really
you don't want them squawking about the federal government over the next year.
You really want to put out a lot of these fires in advance, so that you don't have, you know, the mayor of Listowel coming and saying, you know, I really need this bridge kind of thing. So just to give an example, I mean, you really need the mayors coming to your defense when it's transit, highways, bridges, that kind of stuff. You just need to take that off the table.
You've been in war rooms, both federally and provincially, for a writ period, and you know, in the old days, before we had these fixed election dates, highly compressed. We got 5 weeks. We're going to do at week 1, week 2. You know, you've got your script laid out.
Absolutely.
This is a year-long campaign. It's kind of a new territory for all the campaign managers. Do you get the sense that there are scripts people are already executing on at this point?
I don't think that anybody's got a week by week or day by day script from now till the end.
Quarter by quarter, possibly.
Yeah, I think there's themes, right? I think if you try to, and both parties or all parties will have this kind of a thing where, from now to the budget is one period of time where each of them will have something they're trying to achieve. I think Harper's clearly trying to set the choice between tax cutter, and tax hiker, along with sort of, you know, what are our priorities. And then I think once the budget comes in and gets passed, you'll have a parliamentary session where you're essentially trying to communicate on the budget, and the Liberals will be trying to, take down the Conservatives' economic credibility. And then I think that there will be a very strict rollout plan for both parties from, you know, call it June till October, where you really do have to plan out every day.
We were talking to some opposition sort of strategists, and they were saying that, you know, by and large, it has to be reactive strategy. They have to react to what the government's doing. That said, let me suggest that the timing for some of these take place in the context of, we've seen, what, 2 or 3 polls now, where Trudeau's numbers are looking like they're softening, Conservatives firming up a bit, and this looks like, let's harness a bit of that wind and let's keep those numbers going in the same direction.
I think so. I mean, that's the goal, obviously. The Conservatives are trying to build some momentum, and the truth is, this is easier to keep momentum in government. I don't mean by that everybody loves you. I mean, it's hard to govern, and you've got tough decisions to make, but it's easier to make news in many ways in government. Now, Justin Trudeau
Right.
He's got his own, not challenges, he's got his own opportunities, because there's nobody that's easier. Like, he makes a lot of news for an opposition leader.
Yeah.
So what's interesting here is we've got two, sort of, the Conservatives, I would say, have been reactive, or the criticism has been that they've been reactive for the last couple of years. You see them being proactive, and I think it's paying some dividends for them. Trudeau's, looks a little listless these days.
Yeah. No, well, again, you've got $5.8 billion to hand out. You make anybody look listless. Sure. Jason Lietaer, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.